expecting probably 18 inches of snow tomorrow and
I saw that in North Dakota.
50 mile an hour winds.
That would be fast. They just can't. Those operations just so big.
Yeah.
Protecting them. They can this time of year for better weather.
I represented a guy once who did that, the tree range, or whatever they call it, that land. And just disappears sometimes, you don't know for sure what happened to him.
I guess when you have so many.
Yeah.
Just do that all.
Yeah. And figured everybody disappeared.
All right. It's 5 o'clock. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carol's going to be best speaking to this.
Carol's that, you can tell she's.
I lived here for many, many years. Even before we had to, I did.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, budget hearing first, right at 5.
So, school district budget hearing, so we will call that to order and move on to item 2 is public input regarding proposed 2022-2023 school district budget. So entertain any public input as it relates to the district budget. So seeing, hearing none, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn our budget hearing meeting.
I'm going to make a motion to adjourn from the budget hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Shane. So it's moved and seconded to adjourn from our budget hearing meeting. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Is Michelle on? She is not. I have it open and I'm here. I'm looking at my phone to see I missed a phone call from Ryan. Sorry about that. No, I did not see Michelle.
Okay. Or just let us know so we can make sure that we engage with her when she comes on. Thanks for asking the question, Robert. So we'll call our regular meeting to order. Are there any amendments to the agenda and changes?
There are not.
So no changes to the agenda. So unless there's any questions, I would entertain a motion to approve our agenda for this evening.
Make a motion to approve our agenda as presented.
Thanks, Ron. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Carol. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as published. Any discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Wait, we have Michelle.
Michelle's joined us.
She is joined by phone.
All right. Good, thanks, Michelle. So that motion is approved. So we'll move on to consider minutes, bills, and financial reports.
Bills and minutes, obviously, there's nothing alarming in there. One of these things I do want to point out is if you look at the financial dashboard that I send, if you look at where we're at as far as year-to-date from a year ago, we're substantially higher in both revenue and expenditures, which worries me, and it doesn't. A lot of that is to account the ESSER funds that are coming in and going out, which increases both of those numbers. But we're still $250,000 over where we were last year, and that's about where we were for ESSER dollars are actually higher than that. So if you take the ESSER dollars out, we would be in line with where we're at. One of the things that scares me, and not this year, but yet it does, because we're into April. We have, the whole month of April, the whole month of May, and then June to finish out. So we're roughly 3 months before the end of the fiscal year. So we need to remember that's the small 15% that you guys can cover, that 15 to 20%. That's not salaries and wages, so that's something we need to scrutinize. We should be, what I say this time of year is we should be able to finish the year with what we have for those 3 months on hand. That's not entirely true. We ran out of paper. This leads in my discussion for next fiscal year that, we just saw an increase of 100% in paper stock. So we went from $23 a box to $43 a box of paper leading into next year. So, and you go through roughly 200 cases. So there's $4,000 increase in just paper that we have to take into account for next year. So, and I know that's just one thing, and it's a higher supply than any of the others. But just to give you an idea, those things are going to have a cumulative effect, and they're just going to continue to rebound like that. And that's just something we have to, leading in, I think, if we start now scrutinizing those things and realizing those things as we go into next year, we've got a better idea of what we're looking at into the future. Because if we're looking, projections that we did 2 or 3 months ago, we're figuring 4 and 5% increase in spending. Now it may be an 8 to 9%. So, when we do our forecasting, the way things are right now, it's tough to get an idea of how to forecast when you don't know where everything's going. And it's just getting worse. So just keep that in mind as we go, and we'll try to look at that again in a month. I'll come back and with those estimates and see where we're at again, where things are going. Hopefully we're settled by then. We can have true numbers for our salaries and benefits, and we can go and look at those areas that, you guys can really impact. So.
Robert, are you seeing any in the non-ESSER? I mean, I know of a general inflationary trend, but are you seeing any particular areas that inflation is hitting harder that are concerning you, or is it just?
I think it's
just
across the
everything?
board. I think it's across the board in everything. One of the things I did look at, and we were very fortunate to do it, and we'll have a renewal proposal for you probably next month, is, if you remember, we shifted to a pool for natural gas. That's already being a huge savings to us when natural gas, when war in Ukraine started, natural gas exploded. And the good thing is we're covered by it this year. We'll see next year our rates obviously will go up, but that still shifts it from general fund to management fund, which helps our in-stock balance in the general fund. So, there's one thing we looked at, but Ron, I think it's in everything you see it, and it's a daily change. It's not, something 6 months ago or a year ago we were worried about building materials, and now I think we're worried about all inputs. It's becoming ridiculous, and we'll feel it in our food, our nutrition fund also, and that's federally funded, but that's where it's going to start hitting really hard, is in the nutrition fund, because those prices are already at 10-12% increase over where they were a year ago.
Right, that's what I was gonna ask that, because I saw in a lot of schools in the metro area, we're talking about raising their prices of lunches and things.
We will be discussing that this summer.
This summer, okay. So
And we
not yet.
typically do our annual meeting in July where we set like fees and textbook fees and
Okay.
activity fees. But Shelley has already braced me that we'll have to, unless something changes where they're gonna go back to the full federal lunch program where everything is paid for, we'll have to make some decisions on lunch prices. And still, they're, even based on what she braced me for tentatively, it's still not much compared to what I think you get. But we'll have to we'll have to consider those adjustments this summer.
So if you would take current cost, so I would think about cost at the start of the year, in my mind, it's like a standard cost. That's what we set budget on. Current's what we're paying today. So if you took a look quickly, not to the penny, but current cost for all these consumables and utilities and bus fuel and paper and all those kinds of things, any idea what that total dollar amount is?
For total dollar amount, it's probably not gonna look for the difference of what we look. Are you talking looking into next year with
Yeah.
total dollar amount? I was thinking in probably $200,000 to $250,000 is probably what we're looking at. And I actually did look at that today, to try to get a feeling of where we would be next year and what our increase would be. And that doesn't seem like a whole lot when you got a $10 million budget, but when you're running a tight budget, as schools do, that's significant.
For sure. I think that's a good number for us to hear, like, unless it gets worse, like that's a significant number.
Well, that's what, we've tried to contract out on diesel fuel, and diesel fuel supplier wouldn't even contract it. If it was an extraordinary amount. Now I'm sure they won't even touch it because the market's so volatile. And our diesel prices from the beginning of the year have doubled, so, and there's something that, we're small enough where we don't have a huge impact like Des Moines would as far as routes and things, but when you look at, maybe a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 increase in diesel fuel, couple that, with supplies and everything else, those little things and little amounts that we see in increases add up quickly. And that's the thing that's concerning is, everything's adding up or doubling. So, that's where I'm getting worried about.
Yeah, the thing just to keep in mind too is I just listened to this, as you guys all know, history, politics geek, and a guy spoke today and said, the solution to inflation has rarely been painful. Yeah, when we've done that with Harry Truman or Eisenhower or Reagan, it's not good for, it's not like there's a wave a magic wand that can really impact the economy negatively, although inflation does slow it, but it throws the economy off whack to do those things too.
Well,
So I just don't see good things coming out of any of this, that's what I'm trying to say.
And the scary thing is, there's not just one thing impacting right now and even one we have really control over, so. I hate to be doom and gloom, but I just wanted to throw that out there and prepare us as we finish this year and go into next year. We've got to really be diligent. And hopefully the state comes out with something, because they're going to have to realize that people's spending authority in those dollar amounts everything's going to get tight, and there's going to have to be some adjustments made. I think it's inevitable, because if not, you're going to see schools bump up against that and no fault of their own, just because of pricing.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you looking and trying to make at least some prediction for next year based on at least what we know today. Any other questions, comments about the minutes and bills and financial reports? If not, then I'll entertain. Michelle, are you able to hear okay? Sorry about that.
I can. Ron was a little muffled.
He always is.
I can hear Robert pretty well, and Mark, I can hear better than Ron, but a little difficult.
Okay, all right. We'll remember to speak up in case Ron has something of interest, so he'll speak a little louder.
I'll use my bullhorn.
Sounds good.
Teacher voice.
Thank you.
Teacher voice.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve our minutes and bills and financial reports.
I'll move to approve minutes, bills, and financial reports.
Thanks, Carol. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ron, second. So it's been moved and seconded to approve our minutes, bills, and financial reports. Any further discussion or questions? If not, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same
Aye.
sign. Whoops, sorry.
Delay.
I probably shouldn't use same sign, or you're gonna have a no vote here
Yeah.
soon. So that's approved, and we'll move on to informational only and start off with shout outs. Tony?
Yeah, so much like swimming a couple of months ago, we do have some bowlers who participate as Pleasantville students with other school districts. And so wanted to throw a shout out to Jocelyn McCormick, who qualified for the state bowling meet. Her sister, she's phenomenal at a lot of those same things that her sister was good at. So
Running the family.
it must run in the family. I called her older sister Kingpin for 2 or 3 years, and she finally figured out why I called her that. I'm going to throw a shout out to the solo and ensemble choir. I got to get out of the habit of calling her Miss Bukursky. Mrs. Bieber emailed me kind of a summary there. Several Division I ratings. They got a cappella choir as well as treble choir, and then a list of the kids, and just a great group of kids there. That no surprise with those kids involved, that we had a lot of success. So congrats to Mrs. Bieber and the crew with the solo and ensemble choir. Last thing, Carol, you were there too, just a fabulous event on Saturday. The first ever fine arts showcase. It was a different type of event. You know, it was not a traditional concert at all. It was just an opportunity for kids to get up and perform whatever music or whatever skits or whatever type of talents they wanted to showcase. And there's a lot of art demonstrated, and there was a silent auction, and just the whole night really came together well for something that I felt like the fine arts boosters felt like they were taking a little bit of a risk with something different. I think they were really happy, and they should have been happy with the turnout and the night. It was just a great way to see a lot of fantastic talent. And the part that blew my doors off the most, Elizabeth Goodale got up and performed a song, and we talked about this at intermission. The whole time I was sitting there thinking it was like a Taylor Swift song and she wrote the song and performed it herself. And
The ukulele, playing the ukulele, it's awesome.
And so I was just blown away at some of the talent. Just a neat opportunity to be there to celebrate the kids. So
Yeah, it was great, and the talent is amazing,
Yes.
and those booster people are on it, they're fun.
yep,
They
their
really-
meetings are actually fun.
Yeah, I think they would be, they're good people.
Compared to.
Not compared to this one.
No, but they look like they have a good time, and they put on a good show, it was fun, everything about it was just perfect.
Other than the fact that I got outbid for the coconut cream pie, and it was a huge success.
All right,
Well done to all those folks.
Yes.
That's all I have for shout outs tonight.
appreciate it. Great update. So we'll move on to stadium construction update. Ryan?
Thank you.
Ryan, you'll have to speak up or come closer.
Yeah, why don't you have questions of Michelle?
We've got somebody right online here.
Could doubt your information.
All right. Everybody everyone have their packet? So we'll start on the third page, which is our progress summary. Progress since remobilizing back out to site here. We have all the main site utilities are complete. We're working on the field drainage piping, which would really be all the drainage piping that you see under the future turf. We're working on, we actually just completed the retaining wall on the east side of the field. We are working on the concession stands footings. And then just continuing on with electrical rough-ins, the press box is being fabbed away from the site. So that's in progress.
And that'll be craned up.
It'll be craned into place like mid to late May is what we're looking at for that.
That would be cool.
That would be cool.
We're gonna have the elementary kids out there help.
That's how we do all
There you
the
Yes.
great stuff.
I guess work upcoming, we have, after Joiner's gonna be working on the field drainage, and then they're gonna be final grading the field. And then next comes all your aggregate base courses. We gotta install the track. There's a concrete curb that wraps around the track. And then after that, we'll have, once all the aggregate base courses are down, then the turf will come into play. And then the next step, the asphalt will come into play. So a lot of work upcoming. Press box grandstand footings will be starting soon by Woodruff. Really at the concessions building, once we get the footings in, one of the next steps is to bring in your first course of CMU block, like what you're seeing here. Just bring it in just above the slab on grade height. And then we finish up with all the under slab rough-ins, and then we come back and we pour the slab on grade. And then after that, once the slab on grade's done, they build the walls all the way up. So I guess progress photos, we have some pretty good photos in here, I thought, for the past month. This first page here is actually one of our prime contractors, Woodruff, is pouring that retaining wall footing. So it's quite a big footing down there at the bottom of that wall. You can see all the rebar sticking up and out of it. And then, so basically they pour this footing, let it cure. And then the next step is the actual foundation wall or retaining wall above it. So what you're seeing in this picture is one side of the formwork, and then all the rebar inside and all the form ties kind of sticking through. And then these panels down here on the ground are the other side of the formwork. So if you flip the page, you can see that basically the day they poured, they had a big concrete pump truck that pumped the concrete into those forms. And then the picture on the right is what it looks like when it's done. So that retaining wall is backfilled now. There's drainage behind it, a drainage tile. The next page shows your footing layout at the concession building. And then the next photo is just, again, it's formwork and rebar for those footings at the concession building.
I know it's the angle, but it looks like that's right up to that.
Right up to that shed. It doesn't, there's a hill there. Yeah, there's some distance between there.
Well, that's actually up high on the bleachers. But
Yes.
boy, it looks like it's like right there.
It's gonna be different.
Then the next page, this page is your field drainage. So underneath all the turf, we have all these black drainage pipes. And that's just a joiner is the one who's got the excavator there on site. They're putting in the filter fabric and all the granular fill and drainage pipes. So schedule update on the next page. This is just kind of a snapshot at our 3-week look ahead. Really kind of what I've already talked about. We have joiner who's going to be doing the field drainage piping and grading that field once they're done with that. We have Woodruff working on finishing up the footings and foundational walls. Pyramid is going to be doing the block at the concessions building. That's about it really for the next couple weeks. So
The question everybody wants to know, when does turf go in? We're still thinking last
Turf?
week of May.
we are actually on the schedule right now for May 16th to mobilize with the turf guys. So that's the big push right now, May 16th.
Outstanding.
So those guys have about,
Did I hear that correctly? We are on schedule?
yes, we are.
Okay,
Brian never likes to say it, Michelle. I think we're actually technically ahead of schedule.
Yep.
excellent.
I noticed Ryan, I've also noticed Ryan is well schooled, isn't it? But like a lawyer to always minimize things. Things are okay.
I brag to Steve every time I talk to him about it. We're way ahead.
The next page, so we did this page a little differently. We wanted to show you guys kind of a full snapshot of the budget and cost control. So we actually just attached the overall log that we're keeping. This actually, I thought this shows it a little bit better. You can see I highlighted all the changes that are pending board approval tonight. That's everything in yellow. The irrigation line change order actually got approved at the last board meeting. We just need a signature on it because need to collect that. But everything here in yellow, you can see what we're taking out of the construction contingency, what is an approved allowance that was really already built in to those guys' contracts. So it's not a modification of the overall contract. And then approved contract change would be coming outside of the construction contingency. And we can kind of go through these however you guys would like. I know the biggest changes at this board meeting are the fly ash. We found out from Terracon that they recommend fly ashing underneath the track. The scoreboard structure and install, Daktronics, which Daktronics, it sounds like, did give you guys a great quote on the scoreboard, but they don't include install of the scoreboard. So through the project, we had to quote installing the scoreboard. So that was a big one on here.
And that's a standard. I mean, I did find out, what I wanted to find out from Daktronics was, did you omit it just so that our price looked better, or is that standard? And Daktronics just doesn't install them. So, at first I was afraid that maybe we got, some things omitted from our estimate on the scoreboard, but that's not the case. This is generally the way they do it. It's, there's a big cost, but you need to keep in mind that when we value engineered a lot of this stuff, this is the kind of stuff that came out at the time, and then we knew would have to come back in at some point in time.
Yeah.
There's a few of these that were surprises.
Yep. I guess the other main ones they're split up into a couple different changes, but it's really all for one thing. We're prepping for the future storage building. That way it makes sense now to go ahead and get all the underground electrical, the underground sanitary and water. So those are on here. And then I guess there's two smaller ones, the temp power for the softball lights, which actually addresses, sounds like the dugouts and the press box. It's kind of what we just found out. We got the old power came out of the shed in the corner. So we figured we need to get power back to those for softball season. And
Believe it or not, we did try to come up with a way to not do that. We tried to move varsity games up first and play JV games after, instead of the traditional way. And there's a few other things that schools in our conference do that don't have lights. But ultimately, when you figure the dugout's not having power, there's no water down, it got to a point where it was not worth the hassle.
Can I intervene real quick on that?
Yep.
So I did hear some public output on that where we were talking about moving the softball games to 5 o'clock or whatever. So is this alleviating?
Yeah, with us, I mean, there's an action item here, number 3, Shane, where you can see all the change orders, and that $6,400 change orders to make sure that we play our schedule like we normally would.
Okay.
We've got to have power back down there. We tried hard to come up with a way to do it, even though it wasn't going to be comfortable.
Yep.
But ultimately, we can't make it work.
Gotcha. I figured that's what that was, but
Yep.
just wanted to bring that up.
there's one on here for exposed structure paint at the concessions building. Really what that is, one of these VE options early on actually deleted the gypboard ceilings inside those concession bathrooms, which it was a good cost credit back to us. But this is just the cost to paint that exposed structure. So we're gonna paint it either black or dark gray. But that way all your bar joists and everything that you see will be painted black. It'll look real nice. So that's what that $1,116 changeover is for.
Can we go back to the fly ash? So why'd you miss that?
So the fly ash, yeah, so we had this conversation amongst the project team too. At the beginning of the project, we have Terracon who does the geotechnical report, and they essentially, they go around and they pick spots throughout the field, and then they have their recommendation. And until we come back and we get that field to the grade it's supposed to be at, that's when Terracon comes back again and does samples to find out what we need to do. It was the civil engineer's belief that with our sub-base, he thought we'd be okay without doing fly ash. So that's what the documents indicated. The original documents, we did lock in the unit price, which was $6.75 a square yard. Because they always knew it could be a possibility, but so they locked in the unit price, and then essentially we had Terracon come back this spring once we're at the level we're at. They took the samples and found out that, yeah, the soil is just really soft. I think it's at the end of the day, it's Terracon's recommendation to do it, but if we don't, there's always a chance with soft soils that you could see dips or bumps or in that track. So we confirmed with DLR their opinion if we should go with Terracon's recommendation or not, and the civil engineer Simon said he agreed with the recommendation to move forward with it. So
I'll be honest, this is one I had a really hard time with. We did talk about this possibility. I mean, Kenny was still on the board at the time when we talked about it, but because I remember him talking to me afterwards about how difficult fly ash is to work with as a substance. But, I think this is always one of those that's hard to bite off and digest. But I do think, and Michelle, I don't know if you want to chime in too, but you were the only person that I heard back from on this topic. But based on some of your work experience, this is one of those unfortunate things that unstable soils is not a fun thing to have to deal with, but
Exactly. And that was actually, I was going to comment on this. And so we call it, what did I say? Expansive soil. is what I'm used to the term being in a residential construction environment. And we can do core samples early on as we're making an offer on a property to determine if we think we're gonna get into expansive soil situations where then we have to overbuild our footings, if you will. And I'm sure I'm not saying this all correctly, but I think everybody can probably follow me. So anyhow, I mean, you know, we have the experts, if you will, give us their professional advice and opinion. And, you know, it is a hard pill to swallow, but you know, in the grand scheme of things, if we're having structural issues later on, obviously it's money well spent at this point. One question I had is there, and I probably should know this, but I can't remember, and I'm using my real estate brain. So if I have ever had a client go against the recommendation of the builder and or engineer, for example, in this case, a lot of times that would null and void any warranty on that item because, hey, we recommend it, we can't make you do it, you can choose not to, but we're not going to warranty it, you know, any further. Is there any type of situation here as far as warranty work that if we didn't do this, and I'm not suggesting I don't want to do it, I'm just trying to get the facts.
That's it. That's a good question, Michelle. I would think that I would think you'd still have a warranty on the track, but if we see an item come up where it's like I was saying, a dip or a bump and we didn't do the fly ash, then they're going to come back and say that their warranty doesn't cover that item. So sometimes we do request sample warranties. So that is one thing I can request is to see the language on it up front. But I would guess that if we're seeing what is typical from not doing fly ash, then the track guy is going to cover more like surface wear and tear. If his striping goes bad, things of that nature would be my guess on that.
Very good, thank you.
And I had a really quick secondary level question is, I want to know what fly ash does, and then going back to Kenny's concern, if it is difficult to work with, is this price firm or is that something we may have to address later?
Yeah, so it's essentially like a cement soil stabilization material that there would be a truck that comes in and it would spray it on the ground, and then Joyner would work it into the soils with his equipment. And essentially when they're done with it, it makes that dirt almost like concrete. It makes that dirt really, really hard.
Okay.
And it would remain that way. So I think it makes it hard to work with from a standpoint of if you need to get in underground rough ends and if you need to get underneath it, it's going to make it harder to work with. But yeah, that's essentially what it is. It's probably it's not all that long of a process. Maybe like a week or so to get the fly ash done, but it's just a matter of bringing in that big specialized equipment, and that's why the cost is $675 a square yard, which that price is locked in. So it's all based on how much is needed, and they recommended doing the track and doing the
areas.
Yep, we have the shot put, discus, and the long jump area that were recommended. So,
All right, thank you.
So I interrupted you there, so I'm not sure you were done with the fly ash. I interrupted you with the fly ash question, so I'm not sure if you were done.
I think that's all I got.
Okay. So any other questions or comments for Ryan while he's here? So we can go ahead and schedule some early football games late July.
First one, September 2nd, I know.
One thing like this chart, it's.
I thought that was better.
it's
Just
easier to see.
Yeah,
It's better for me. I don't know about anybody else, but it made more sense than what we were seeing before.
yes.
Thank you.
Yep, and I guess I will add one thing too, just to kind of make more sense of it. Down here in the bottom right-hand corner says original contract amount. That amount is simply if you go to this next page of the financial status report, these are like all the project costs together, meaning owner cost, Estes cost, prime contractor cost. So your tabs here, if you will, or rows, number 20 is essentially like Estes construction cost with the construction fee and things like that. Number 40 is all the primes on the job and what they add up to. And so that row 20 plus row 40 is what adds up to that 4,917,283 for that, what we're calling the original contract amount. We're really, if you look at everything, there's costs outside. Some of these items down here are owner cost. Some of these items up here are DLR group has a fee too. So you can kind of see down here at the bottom, the construction contingency is carried by you guys as the owner. So really, as an overall project cost, that cost was always in there. We're just essentially moving it from down here to paying the primes with some of that money. Does that make sense? So this just kind of gives.
This was good, that you just totally lost
Yeah,
me.
this
Sorry.
is more,
That was good.
this page here
Stop.
is more for Robert
I like
and
hearing those
and
numbers
Tony.
in there, so just, yeah, okay, good.
so you can ignore this page.
Robert,
if you
that's
want.
I thought I was boring in my presentation.
I follow you. It was so good. I like this
Guys,
page.
you're probably saying it, I just can't hear.
Go ahead, Michelle.
That contingency that we had built in for construction, in the amount of, what did we say, 147,000-ish,
Yep.
or something like that?
Yep,
So did I understand correctly, with our change orders, that we're either approving or denying today, that will absorb that entire remaining contingency balance?
yes, yep, that's correct.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, and that's that original contract amount versus revised amount, a little bit lower on the revised, but that's with us absorbing that entire amount.
yeah, correct. Yep.
Okay,
So you're basically seeing a revised contract amount is about $12,000 less, which is, if you're looking at these two columns, you can see that approved contingency and approved contract change is about a $12,000 difference there too, to match that. So
so the $1 million question then, Ryan, is what do you project added costs will be between now and completion?
that is the $1 million question.
Let's not hope a million.
Yeah, it's, I think I'm safe to say it's not a million.
At this stage or earlier in construction versus kind of the, I'm gonna call it the trim and finishing stages of the project.
Yeah, I would say, like the bigger ones like fly ash and stuff are, when we get to like trim and finish stages, I don't think we'll see these big lump sum amounts like for scoreboard and fly ash. There's always gonna be stuff that comes up throughout construction. I'd be lying if I sat here and said, I don't think there's really gonna be much more. We don't know.
Right.
Hindsight's 2020. Obviously we're gonna do whatever we can to try to limit them and catch whatever we can. But it's hard. It's a really tough question to answer. I'm just not sure.
Remind me at what point in
Yeah.
time you're liable.
Personally,
When does it start coming out of your picture?
right? I don't know the answer to that. I know that right now we're essentially, like this shows, we're negative 12,000 on the contract. I know that we don't want to go over the original contract amount by, 100,000. We don't want to put you guys in that situation. So I think what we'll try to do is I try to keep Tony as updated as possible on the bi-weekly meetings, where we're at, if I foresee any extra changes coming. We've already talked about some little stuff like, hey, it sure would be nice to put concrete where this grass is. And we're looking at pricing, but it might have to be a conversation of, are these truly owner enhancements, or are these necessary for the project if the budget starts getting really, really tight for you guys? But,
Yeah, so I get that, but it seems like there's contractual language for your responsibility as well from the original quote,
as far as
the dollar amount.
so we have our contract amounts, so we're obligated to give you guys what's in the plans and specs and what's in the bid documents. These things, change orders would only be if it was outside of those bid documents, and approved here at the board meetings.
And we're pushing 50% through the project, I think.
Yep, correct.
Yep.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments?
The only thing Ryan didn't mention that I thought he might is that it's starting with the turf mid-May, late May apparently.
Yep.
From there, they're gonna work outward, so they'll pour the concrete or the asphalt. Interesting thing, we'll have to advertise the heck out of this. Asphalt has to cure for 30 days.
Yep, 1 month.
So,
Yep.
gotta be a situation where we can't have any kids in there, can't have anybody running around. We have had one instance where a kid got through the fence, and so we'll have to beef up fences and make sure that nobody's on that, because we don't want any delays.
Can we
Well,
get
there's added cost.
Can we, sorry, Michelle, could we get some cameras up, potentially
We
some
do.
deterrent? So,
We do have cameras up.
and publicize that we have cameras up. That we,
Sure.
Tom will
Knoxville's-
put it on Facebook and find out who it is.
When Knoxville did their track,
I was
they
just
had
gonna
some
say,
problems with
I know it-
bicycles on that track.
You probably have patrol.
Or was I dreaming that? I swear there was something.
There shouldn't be anybody in there. We've got fencing, 8-foot high fencing up all the way around. So it should be pretty clear to stay off of it, but.
For some reason, that brought back in there.
Is that it?
Thanks,
Yep.
Ryan.
Thanks,
you,
guys.
Ryan. Thank you.
thank you guys.
So we'll move on to item number 3, and that's communication from the public. No?
Okay, nothing,
Okay.
okay.
All right. Consent agenda. So we'll start off with the personnel report.
Yes, so personnel-wise, a handful of resignations here. Tom Wilkins is asking to step down as varsity boys basketball coach. Our Co-National Honor Society sponsors have submitted their resignations to Gary. And then, as I alluded to in my board update, I kind of got a surprise from Doug Phil that he's intending to retire at the end of this year. So consider his resignation tonight. In terms of new hires, Gary's really excited about Leah Mills. Leah's a experienced secondary science teacher. She's going to come to us with Linda or Gary, 2 or 3 years experience.
Yep, another Simpson guy.
But we're excited. You know, science teachers are hard to find right now, so
Yes.
we're thrilled to get Leah and secure her commitment.
Where was she before?
Was it Carol?
Where was she
Was she
before?
teaching before?
It was a private school, if I remember correctly.
Oh, okay.
She's
There's northwest of Des Moines.
Oh, that one.
Can't remember what it was called.
That one, got it.
In terms of additional new hires, a volunteer track coach. I don't know Donald Scherer personally. He's somebody who's worked with the program a lot over the years. Apparently particularly when Tim Corson was the track coach, he was somebody that worked with the kids a lot. So I know that they're excited about the possibility of getting him back. Mr. Allman went through a process with that included players, other assistant coaches, kind of a team approach and interview, and would like to offer our varsity boys basketball position to Taylor Phipps. And I don't have any reservations about that at all. And then we want to also consider Luke Adrian as a volunteer baseball coach. In terms of open enrollments out for the 22-23 school year, one family got a submission in by the deadline, and it's a family, again, that we've never seen. It's just they moved to just the wrong side of a gravel road that happens to be in Pleasantville's district as opposed to Knoxville's. And so approving the Dawson's request to attend Knoxville schools for next year as an open enrollment out. And then I put number 3 on here as a consent agenda item. Really, it's the only company we can get to fix this thing, and we don't have much. It's just a little over what I can approve without the board's blessing. So I put this on here. Cone Care is basically the only one around that we can get to work on our equipment. And so we need to get this done so that we can stay in compliance with regard to the facility.
Any questions or comments on the items listed in the consent agenda before we entertain a motion?
Tony, I'm sorry, Mike, I just had a quick question. What level of baseball is Luke volunteering at? Just for my information.
I don't know. I can send a text here.
You know what, I
know.
can ask Sheldon, that's not a huge, I just
Okay.
was curious. And just-
Junior high and high school.
Thank you. I was assuming it wasn't a minor league affiliate. Yeah. And then, I'm happy for Coach Phipps, and I hope, we have a ton of discussion about getting better in athletics, and I hope that everybody embraces his hire, and I hope he has a good summer program along with all of our other coaches, because I'm convinced that if we aren't working at all sports during the summer, we will never get better. So I think he did a really good job. I would like our boys basketball program to be really good, and I talked to a couple of people who thought he did a really good job at Des Moines North, and so and I know it's not the easiest place in the world to coach, and so that made me feel really good about our future. So.
Yeah, he's been a head coach 2 different schools. Des Moines North was his most recent stop before he came here, and that's a place that's presented a lot of challenges. He won a fair amount of games there.
They did very well. They did very, very well.
And he was at
Creston.
Creston, sorry. I knew it was down there.
And certainly somebody that's gone all in on our community.
Yeah.
He has a home here and lives here, even though he'll continue to teach, I believe, in the Des Moines public system. He's well known by our kids. He's, since Mr. Wilkins quit doing the play-by-play on Friday nights, Taylor stepped in and did that. He's somebody that, even though he's not here from 8 to 4, he's around a lot. And so I feel really good about the hire, or the recommendation, I should say. I'm trying.
Michelle, any comments or questions before we ask for? a
No,
motion?
I concur with your guys' sentiments regarding Taylor. Had a difficult time hearing Ron, but I agree. They've came back. I think they're here, from a community involvement for the long run. And I think that Coach Phipps, if he becomes coach here, would be a very great asset for us.
All right, good comments. So I'd entertain a motion then for the consent agenda in its entirety.
We'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda in its entirety.
Thanks, Ron. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
No, you're too late. I'd like to take it.
That's okay.
We're sold,
No
we're sold out. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda in its entirety. Any further discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Good job. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, move on to new business. Item number 1, consider adoption of proposed 2022-2023 school district budget.
Yeah,
Thanks for being
so
here.
Thank you.
you have a printout. It would look like, Mark, it's to your far right there. There's a spreadsheet table look. And it's just a breakdown of our total levy rate. I would also call your attention, I think the updated review of funds list is kind of an easier way to look at this perhaps. The color version of the review of funds chart that you have is this year's tax rate. So Shane, it's your top right one over there. It shows you the different sources of funding and what the permissible expenditures are in those bucket areas. And so you can see there's a lot of little buckets along the way that get us to the current year, to the 1649 that per thousand of taxable valuation for the school's tax rate. Next year, what Robert's calculated out is dropping down from 1649 per thousand down to 13.03644 per thousand. And the main reason for that dip isn't related to any other reason than it's sort of a formula driven thing. We've hit a point where we can't reserve for any more cash, get tax back for any more cash. And so with that in mind, we're gonna recommend dropping down to the 13.03644 for the tax rate next year. Robert, anything to add to that? I know we talked a little bit about the management fund earlier.
Right. And it's, our auditors have advised us that our management fund was at a level that was higher than most people's when all said and done. So we decided to decrease that this year, and then we find out our property casualty insurance is going up 25%. So, but we still have enough in reserves to cover it without problem. Last year, we had levied for 400,000, so that's down 300,000. Last year, we'd also, because of SBRC requests for negative special ed, was in the $300,000 range. So we're almost $600,000 in cash that we have not levied for this year that we weren't able to because of our balance. So that's why you see that coupled with the increase in students is why we have a decrease in the actual tax amount.
So said differently, we've hit a point where we don't have to tax for additional cash.
We're not allowed to, yeah, we don't
Allowed
have
to
to,
is
or
what
we're not
we're
allowed to, yeah.
On the other side of that, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Assuming everything stays in order.
Yeah, and cash is, last couple of years, cash hasn't been our problem, it's been spending authority, and they don't go hand in hand, so, I wish they would, but,
A few years ago, that would have been music to people's ears.
yeah.
Right, that we'd hit to that point where
Yeah.
you couldn't tax anymore for.
Yeah, and that's a good, and like I said, it comes at a perfect time for taxpayers to see this drop. And we're not hurt by the decrease in the tax rates.
And probably coming on the heels of what you just said is the best time to lay this groundwork for future reference. But something Robert and I talked about today, and what you're seeing a lot of districts around the state start to look more at, is the possibility of what's called the Public Education and Recreation Levy, or PEARL levy. 10 years ago, it was very underutilized, or there weren't a lot of school districts doing it. I think there's a lot of school districts like ours that are seeing more and more local sports groups, local city groups using our facilities 24/7 at no charge. And so they're trying to generate some revenue, and this PEARL, the Public Education Recreation Levy, is something we could consider down the road. It's a public vote, but it would allow us to go up to an additional 13.5 cents on our rate that would be expressly collected for, helping us with regard to public use and recreation of the facilities, community education type topics, things like that. So I just think with as much as our facilities get used by sports, AAU, and the city at no charge, I think this would be a way to offset some of those costs. And Robert and I talked about things that range from, on occasion, the need for additional custodial because they've been in here and leave the facility a mess, leaving the lights on, just there's a range of topics, and it's certainly not a big tax, but it's one that we could look at if we ever wanted to. I'm perfectly fine if we never do it, but it's something that I wanted to mention to the board that it does seem to be something more schools are adding. It's a one-time vote of the public, and then it stays on as long as we want it to.
So a couple of questions. What would be the dollar amount that would generate in today's world?
Yeah, we can figure that out.
Just be interesting to know, what does that cover? Because I think once you also do that, if it passes, you open up the floodgates, right? If there's anybody out there resisting using the facility, this, in my mind, makes it a public facility once you vote for this.
I can't imagine there's any more people wanting to use the facility than already do.
Yeah, you know that better than I, but I think you've declared it a very public facility once you voted.
And that's been my mantra all along. When I shared the story, my predecessor didn't want kids up here over the summer, and we'd welcome that. I want kids dribbling basketballs in there and being up here. And we've taken some steps to improve that, but I think to your point, I already view it as a public facility.
And any idea what percentage of Iowa schools that have put this to a public vote if that's success of the passing?
I'm not prepared to talk about it in detail tonight. And we're not proposing it.
Yeah,
This
I
is not me
get that.
proposing it. We'd have to take it out and advertise it and do a community vote. But I just wanted to mention it because it is something you're seeing more. I can pull all the data and share it. I can show you exactly how much we would generate. It won't be as much as you think.
Yeah, I was just curious.
On that note, Tony, is there a specified time frame through the calendar year that we, can have the vote on those funds just for preparation purposes?
Yeah, there'd be a handful of dates throughout the year, Michelle, that we could work with the county auditor to run a vote if we wanted to.
Okay. So it's throughout the year, a handful of different times.
Yeah, that's my understanding is if we wanted to do one of these, we'd line it up with a already established vote date.
Very good.
Tony, my question you do not need to address or answer tonight, but I was just curious as to what districts have adopted this, because it seems to me there's a number of districts our size that have some quasi-public facility available for people like we don't. And so I was just curious to see if you could make some inquiries and say, who's using this and then to answer back, because I am, as you can tell, I'm 1000% advocating if we don't do things in the summer, frankly, better than we have, we will continue to struggle. There's just simply there's no other way we can get better other than getting kids up here, so I'm all in favor of that. But I would like to see kind of a portrait of who's using this, because I think of a school like Montezuma that has a private yet public facility for basketball and for indoor work, wouldn't need this. I think we're going to.
I hear, the win-loss thing is obviously important, but I think from a recruitment to the town, a lot of people are very used to some sort of a public facility for recreational athletic type events. And when you don't have that in your community and people are looking, in today's world, it spooks them because they don't want to drive to another community every evening, so.
Even for walking, like somebody like me that walks a lot, I hear that just, anything indoor walking, so.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about this in some time, but it was actually suggested, somebody asked me about it at the chamber meeting. Hey, why don't we do this? Kind of been focused on taking things the other direction with taxes, but I just thought that was interesting that someone brought it up to me.
Especially with the use of I think with the use with the new football field, I think you're gonna see a lot more people use that facility than we have in the past. It also, an area that people forget about is when we opened our fitness center, it was with conjunction with the city. The city pulled out and left us, and so the only thing we have to replace and do maintenance on equipment is our own funds. So that would help alleviate some of that and be able to keep that facility in a little better state.
So unless there's anything else on that, then we would need a motion for
The proposed budget.
I would make a motion to adopt the proposed 2022-2023 school district budget.
Thanks, Ron. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Good job, Michelle. Moved and seconded.
I was trying to do it.
We're trying to be equals. So moved and seconded to adopt the proposed 2022-2023 school district budget. Any further discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We will move on to item number 2, and that's consider the negotiation settlement with Pleasantville Education Support Personnel.
Yeah, so it's a little unique that Pleasantville has our entire support staff unionized. So you think of every associate, bus driver, custodian, cook, and secretary is unionized through the professional support educators group. And so appreciate Carol and Mark's continued support to meet with us and kind of put together a plan. It's the first time in at least the 8 years I've been here where either association accepted our initial offer. So I feel really good about that. I think it's a fair offer. We're proposing we raise wages for everybody in that group 33 cents an hour. And then due to the difficulty in recruiting and retaining custodial, we're going to bump custodial an additional $1 an hour on top of that. So it's a comes out to be about a 3.4% total package increase for the whole group. The custodial addition is a little separate than that, but adds about 48,000 to the district's general fund next year. So I think it's a fair settlement, and based on where we're at, I'm happy to bring this to the board tonight. Typically what happens in the negotiations process is that once we tentatively agree verbally, we bring it to the whole board for a vote. The Support Staff Association, the union has already voted to approve it, so really waiting the board's consideration tonight.
I think the process feels, not that these processes ever maybe feel perfect, but, you know, so we did those meetings back to back where we had our offer prepared, not waiting for them. And so I hope that feels, and I'm guessing it did to at least this group, that we had put out, no matter what they come with this, we actually could have had something on our paper more than theirs, and we would have, believe, put that out in front of them. So I think it feels very authentic and genuine that way. So it's good.
Good work, guys.
Yes, thank you guys very much for doing that.
So unless there's any questions, I'd entertain a motion to approve the negotiation settlement.
I would just have one question, this is just informational. For janitorial, what is the starting wage, including that $1 an hour?
HR is busy looking.
Keep a cheat sheet.
I'm not gonna race her, but I'm gonna. Well, I can tell you that currently, Shane, it is $10.54, so this would bump it up $1.33.
About 33.
And so, you know, I had proposed originally that we look at some different scenarios, and I think the thing that I would commit is that I think we got to continue to look at this from a little bit of a market factor standpoint, like which positions are we struggling to fill and retain, and this is the one. So, you know, I know that for years it was bus drivers, and so, you know, I think we've done well there with bus drivers, and our bus driver rate is really one of the highest in a kind of a 50-mile circle. And so I think that's helped us recruit and retain bus drivers. We've made a living the last handful of years of stealing good bus drivers from Carlisle, and then because we pay more. And so I'd like to get us to that point with some of the other groups too, but I think custodial is the one that we've had the hardest time filling and
Right.
keeping good people.
So that's a starting wage, so I guess where I'm going, how quickly do they move up with experience? I mean, that's somebody just coming off the streets that's had no
Right.
experience.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was getting.
Yeah, so then typically they would move, the way it's structured now is they would move along that every year. They'd bump down potentially, or if we, like this year, we've just framed it as money on the base. And so, and I think with support staff groups, and this is separate from any of the other discussions I've had with teachers, but with the support staff groups, the step and lane schedule, like the one that those are pretty common for teachers. It's the way most school districts do things. They're not common at all for support staff. And so the fact that we've got one, I think is prohibitive to help people understand exactly how it works and looks. I think that putting money on the base is the only way to speak to candidates who want to come in and be a bus driver or a custodian for us. So,
Thank you.
Sorry, I have a really ignorant question for somebody who's been on the board as long as I have, but if somebody came in and let's say they work for a roofing company, and so I'm tired of the seasonal nature, tired of being outside, I want to be they bring some skills, they're not just off the street, but how do we, just so I know, how would we slot them into that janitorial position?
it would be based on where we're at with regard to, do we have other applicants? Do we have, if we had to bump them and credit 2 or 3 years of experience to get them here, that's something that we would have to consider.
I like this proposal. I think it's the way supply and demand work, right? And an open market, and you just have to understand when certain things are higher demand than availability and correct to fix it. So, any other good questions, Shane?
It will be.
What was it?
Okay, I just side comment, it could become teachers soon,
If the system allows for it.
if the demand is
Yeah,
not
The
more.
system would have to open up to allow for that.
Right.
To benefit the teacher, is my point of that. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the settlement.
I motion to approve the settlement.
I'll second.
Is there a second? I'm sorry. So it's moved and seconded to approve the settlement with Pleasantville Education Support Personnel. Any further questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 I,
Sorry, Michelle. So that motion approves. So it's awesome. It's good to have that, that for them, that certainty for them, and that certainty for us, so.
Agreed.
Move on to new business. Consider stadium project change orders, the yellow boxes.
Oh, yep. Yeah, so these are the change orders Ryan outlined. Some of them are for smaller amounts, some of them are harder to think about. You know, some of them are for the future stadium building, whether that's built in conjunction with the current project or down the road. Just kind of sneaking ahead a little bit on the agenda, I'm going to recommend we table that vote tonight. But I don't think it changes anything on this action item, just because we want to step those utilities and have that all there on site now and not try to bore under or tear things up once we're built. So
So that decision is really a 16,000 decision, right? So it's really B and
D,
D.
correct.
Yeah, so 15, 4, 5.
Yep.
So is that clear? So essentially, the building will be tabled tonight, or at least that's the recommendation at this point. But what we would be voting, if we would approve all of these, would to go ahead and have it for sure stubbed in for them.
My understanding would be it'd probably cost more to do after the fact than it would to do up to this.
Sure, it always does, it seems like.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
There's a lot more care that would need to be taken.
Once the economy crunches and
Right.
everything's cheaper, but
Right.
yeah, this is the time to do it. We don't, even if we don't, and I still think, even though we've, you know, this is the first time I really feel like the budget's jumped up a lot on us. But I do anticipate coming back in May with some sort of a plan and endorsement to go ahead and try to build a building. So maybe it'll be a moot point, but we definitely want to stub sanitary, sewer, and power over to it, even if it's 2 years down the road then.
totally agree with that.
so with this I can't remember, is this motion each of them individually or is it together?
Just make it together.
So somebody needs to do that.
Make a motion to approve the stadium change orders as outlined in the agenda.
Thanks, Ron. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Michelle. So it's been approved and seconded to approve the stadium project change orders as stated in the agenda. Any further questions or discussions? Big dollars, we've got all night to discuss it if you have any.
I just had a quick question on scoreboard installation because there wasn't a dollar figure. Is that?
$44,977.
It is on the one that you printed.
Oh, well.
Not the one in.
You get special agendas.
They probably, yeah, that was probably a wise thing. Dumb it down for me.
So that hour, sorry.
No, I just was curious. The other thing I'm gonna make a quick comment for, I was down at a basketball game where they would install the shot clocks at the end of the season to use going forward. And in a community in Murray that I did not think would be able to line up sponsorships, and did line up sponsorships that paid for $6,700 worth of shot clocks. So, you know, if we could, you know, for the scoreboard itself or some things like that to look into some things.
So it's a real balancing act because when we talk fundraising, I feel like people are already hit up a ton. And we're these guys would tell you every time we get hit with a fundraising request, I'm kind of the anti-fundraising police. because of that reason. And so there will be some opportunities on the new scoreboard. In fact, part of the curriculum that will come along from Daktronics that we will implement with Mr. Bethke's new computer science class is a marketing graphic, I don't know, Gary, what we're going to call it, but they're basically going to do some of the graphic design work for that. And there are some cool sponsorship opportunities, but I'm always really cautious about that because I feel like we over fundraise our community. And, as a local business owner, you know that better than I do, but I'm always cautious about that.
I would just say this, Tony, and I'm sorry for monopolizing some time, but yes, we do over fundraise. Part of that's just being in a small community. I don't have any problem though when you just put things out there and say, these are opportunities. If I want to take advantage of it or Mark or whoever wants to take advantage of it, that's fine. I hate when they knock on my door and come in and say, I'm a kid that wants to go to Washington DC, can you sponsor me? Not, that kind of thing puts you in a tough spot. But when it's just, hey, we're taking advertising, that's no different than Steve's newspaper or, the Des Moines Register. I guess that's a dime.
When we had the advertising on all the scoreboards, it was renewed every year. We had a waiting list on it.
Yeah.
Because we were only putting 2 on there.
Yeah.
And there were people waiting to get on.
So I think that's a good discussion, and maybe if anybody has some opinions one-on-one with Tony, we didn't have to get too far out of our motion here, but not emotion, our motion. So any other questions or discussions about the change orders? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Change orders are approved. Thank you for that discussion. And so we don't take long to shove those to me, do you? So we'll move on to number 4, consider board policy updates, and start out with the second reading of board policies 700 and 800.
This could be like the second to last one of these. Like May could be it, Linda.
I hope so.
So you had the 700 and 800 policy discussion with Linda last month. Nothing has changed since then. Linda, do you want to kind of, and you've got, just as artifacts, you have the 700 and 800 policies in front of you. I printed them out for you, kind of the summary Linda puts together. I did the same thing for the 8 and 9, or excuse me, the 9 and 1000 series, particularly the 1000 series. Linda, why don't you go through the 9 and 1000 series, just explain kind of what we have in mind.
Okay, so the 900s is on buildings and facilities, and it's a shorter section. You'll see that there's several new policies. So over the years, IASB has added some things. I think just as things have come up in our state, media, news conferences, broadcasting, and recording. The use of school district facilities and equipment, there was a policy out there, but it wasn't regulated. So that's new and that's been added. Weapons, and then you'll see some of the new things like unmanned aircraft and drones and public emergencies. How do we handle public emergencies? So those are some of those new policies that, because of our times and things that have happened, we're addressing those. Some of the things that have been modified, visitors to the school districts, it was just, it's more general to give the school districts a little bit more lenient leeway if they want it, but it's just really more general. It doesn't list out specific people, but just kind of gives those basic expectations to conduct themselves appropriately, and doesn't tell them specifically what they can and can't do, just be appropriate. Transporting students in private vehicles, that was kind of a new thing. It was a policy that was there, but one of the things that was changed was that if a student or a parent declines school transportation, they are then liable for that transportation, and their safety rests with them and the student, the driver and the student rather. So it was just more identifying, if you're driving on your own, it's not the school's fault if something happens. Advertising and promotion, it used to be the sales promotions prohibited. So the title was changed, the language was more updated. It doesn't talk about specific sales promotion necessarily, just advertising and promotion in general. And then the community use of the school district facilities includes, we already have a facility guide and forms for our community members who want to use the facilities. So we just included that in there, so everything's in one place. And then the tobacco and nicotine-free environment, again, kind of keeping up with the times. It includes vaping and e-cigarettes and those kinds of things that have been new. Some of the policies that are removed, you'll see some of those actually fell under the financial section. So although they're not necessarily gone, they've just been engrossed in some of the other policies that we've already reviewed. So really nothing there that we felt like we needed to. The IASB doesn't have one. A lot of those topics were covered under other policies. So those are just ones we did not need to have anymore. On the Series 1000,
So out
go
of
ahead.
curiosity, what does a unmanned aircraft and drone policy look like?
The one that we talked about, there are people that have those out there, and it's just that they need to follow FAA rules and regulations, basically. So we're not, if they're going to have it at one of our events, they need to ask permission, but of course, there are certain laws and things that are actually being written and being updated because that's a new thing, so they need to follow those regulations.
They have to be insured, they have to follow FAA regulations, they've got to sign a hold harmless and indemnification ahead of time. There's some.
So if they did all that, they could be above an activity.
No, because the athletic association forbids it.
Okay, that's what I was concerned about. How do we regulate the nuisance or the safety part of that? Or
And it says it right in here, both the athletic association and girls union regs will apply, and they've taken a flat stance, and this is no.
But does that cover Vinca's World and like just any of our students outside being?
If unmanned aircrafts are operated as a part of a district curriculum, there's a paragraph about how that works.
But you just can't show up and be licensed as staff and record the dance with a drone. And we have to say it's okay.
Right. Yeah, so what it goes on to say is you, ahead of time, if you're going to use it as a part of the curriculum, you have to have the permission first.
Just curious about where that's, and that one will be different.
Well, we already have instances,
Right.
I mean, Monty would get these drones through some FFA co-op share thing, and I mean, we will need to make people aware of this.
It's just a new thing, and there's not been a lot of rules around it, but
Make scouting easier. Just send the drone to the game.
Just wait till we spray the school pond with
Suitors deal.
Shooter's deal.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but just curious.
Any other questions on the 900s? All right, moving on to the 1000s.
This is the best one. I'm so excited about this.
The interesting thing about the 1000s is that the IASB, and they don't have any 1000s, but we had our own section of 1000s.
Because we're better.
So,
Who came up with that?
Lots of districts have 1,000 series. They're going away from it now.
yeah, evidently.
So we're about to be trendy.
Yeah, so we're gonna go with that trend. Really, all the policies that we had in there are really covered in other areas. You can see the policies that are listed on the left-hand side are covered by the policies on the right-hand side. So we're putting some of those back, and there were literally duplicate policies, some that were in some area and some that were in this area. So we're just moving them back to where they belong. The Citizens Advisory Committee, the SIAC committee, that's covered by the ad hoc committee in 208. So that's really one that we've covered a while back. So it doesn't need to have its own policies. So that's actually covered elsewhere.
So did you notice, were they covered before your work with this, or because of some revisions, they're now covered? Does that make sense?
So the ad hoc committee, are you talking about the specific SIAC committee?
But just any of these, and when you're saying really, so I'm just wondering, like, did it get here because people forgot what was in the
Because they
policies
didn't want to
already?
read all of it. And
So they just
No,
created
it's
new
there.
ones, or did you change it, or did we change it up in the early ones if it's now covered? Both.
Yeah, I don't think there was any specific way. I think things just got dropped in there. Sometimes it was things that just didn't fall, like the gifts by public school personnel, and maybe as that came about, we didn't associate that with, the right section, and
Most of these are moving to policies that we've since revised but weren't in existence before. Is that what you're asking? Are these like, are we shifting to policies that never existed before? No, most of these
No.
existed.
No,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
asking, when it came up, did they just plop it in 1,000 because they didn't want to look into the others to see? Was it easier just to make up 1,000 one, right, Mark? Is
Or,
that-
or is it that we've revised them, so now we don't need these?
And so now they're somewhere else. That
Not
was
sure
his
it's
question.
very relevant, it's just.
Yeah, I don't know. So,
That's okay.
well, I'm not sure how they
Important thing is they're
ended
going
up
well.
there, so. But yeah, they all, I didn't feel like there was a lot of miscellaneous stuff that we didn't need or use. It was something, if these were policies that we're typically using that we have elsewhere. It was almost like there was a second copy here for a lot of those things. And yeah, we just are moving them back to their proper place. And so we now only have 9 sections, the 100s to the 900s, and we no longer have a 1,000 section. So.
Is there any area, I thought about this when you talked about the transporting students in private vehicles. As we get more clear with our policies, who's regulating our adherence? Like the more clear, is
I was on something, I swear.
that the storm?
Sorry about that.
The more clear you get, perhaps the more liability involved by not following. So, and I remember signing out my girls, they were riding home with me, like, there's just a lot of things there that need audited to make sure that we're following our
The
better
proper
written
policy.
policies.
We're doing what we say
Yeah.
we are doing. Certainly, that's definitely a concern. I think part of that, I know Tony sent out a staff update just this week that clarified some of the new policies, make sure that you're reading them. There are some changes, and here's, a group of them that you might want to spend some time looking at. So it's up to us to make sure that they know of some of those changes. Do we expect that everybody's going to read them all? That's a challenge. But, I think for some of those things that are more administrative, certainly, you'll have the principals that will focus on, that 600 section or the student section, whatever that is to make 500. So they make sure that we're following all of those. So certain people will have different sections that are more important to them, and they'll really need to follow those, make sure that we're reading those and keeping up with what we say we're going to do. Especially when it comes to students, I think, especially, and staff.
The concern I've always had, and I love our FFA farms, I'm not saying that is, but if we have activities that students are directed to perform there and they're responsible for their own transportation out there, I think there's a reasonable argument that they fall under the school because we are directing them when and where to be using their own transportation. That actually, I've always thought about that. Then last year, I know not our baseball program, but another baseball program encourage their kids to go with their own families and to games, and obviously go to and from games because of COVID concerns. And again, if you're saying we want our kid, we want mom to take 3 boys to a baseball game, here's what time they need to be there. I think that is a concern, that would run across. That's a little unique with us, but it's always been something I've wondered about. It's those concerns. So.
Yeah, and when that goes back to that policy in the 900s that talk about, whichever one we talked about, transporting students in private vehicles, or we explicitly state, and does something like that need to be in a student handbook? That may very well be a good step to take for some of those changes that are going to be important to parents and students.
I just think this is a tough one because there's not enough resources to truly audit some of these things. And it's just more burden on administration and staff as well, but it's an interesting balance of making sure that we're doing from a legal perspective as well as if we believe that it's just the right thing, which we do for our students and staff. So.
Any questions about any of that? I guess one other thing I'll just mention, just for future reference, while we won't be going through 100s and 200, we won't plan to go through these again, all of them in that period of time. I'll plan to put together a schedule that each series needs to be reviewed every, I think it's 5 years at minimum. So I'll put them on a schedule, so we're reviewing them every probably at least 4 years. And then there are primers with IESB, so they put out, here's some updates to the policy, and it might be a 100 and a 300 and a couple 600s, and so we'll go through those as those come out, but it won't be, it won't be just these big chunks anymore. I know you'll miss that. But it's just not, our hope is to just keep up with them, so let's say not this coming year, but the year after, we might review the 100s and 200s again, but there will be a lot less changes. We'll just follow those primers as they go, and then anything else that we want to change in those, we certainly can.
So the motions are what? We kind of went from 7,800 immediately to 900,000, but we approved the 7,800, right?
I think you could take it as one action item, just to consider board policy updates as presented.
We're into that. Anybody want to articulate that?
I'll move that we accept the readings as presented, or policy readings as presented.
Thanks, Carol. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ron. So it's a move and seconded to approve the board policy updates as read and discussed. Is there any further discussion or questions? If not, all those, oops.
No, go ahead.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same.
I,
Sorry, Michelle, opposed, same sign. You got approval.
I just wanted to mention Leah Mills is from Des Moines Public. That's where she came from.
Oh, very good.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
And Simpson.
And some.
We didn't say that again, right?
Yeah.
And Pellet Christian. And Pellet Christian.
And Pellet Christian. It's Matt Mills. It's good. All right, we'll move on to number 5, consider bids on stadium storage building.
I alluded to this earlier in the meeting, we're going to
Kids,
table
over
this.
there.
What I've got right now is kind of a convoluted mess of bids that are not apples to apples, and so I do not think it's right to put this in front of the board tonight. What I need to do is clarify the 2 bids I've got, and then also speak to the city about the permitting process. I think that by the time we get back together next month, also, I can have that accomplished. Certainly, the other possibility, April oftentimes ends up being a special board meeting because of negotiations, settlements, and so I think there'll be an opportunity to make sure that we get this done. Ryan didn't allude to it when he spoke during the construction update, but there's kind of a sweet spot there in terms of the scope of the project where you've got that 30 days, the track's gonna sit there and cure. There's not gonna be anybody inside the whole facility. That would be an awfully nice time to come in and put those footings in and get the structure going. If we're gonna do the team building, the locker room, or excuse me, the storage building, not the locker room. But that would be, timing wise, that would be a really good spot to work it in. So what I'd like to do is come back and just have you table it tonight. And I'll come back in either May or late April at a special meeting if there is one.
Questions or thoughts? So I would need a motion to table this agenda item.
I will make a motion to table the stadium storage building bid consideration.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Shane. I've forgotten my rules of order. I assume this is no discussion. We'll move forward with the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 I,
Opposed, same sign. So item number 5 under new business, consider bids on stadium storage building has been tabled. Number 6, consider repair estimate middle school classroom condenser replacement, aircon mechanical, $14,976.
This would be the classroom in the junior high that had water damage last fall. You may recall that Jerry and I and a few others were, Justin Tippin, a handful, Greg Eichenberger, sat there and water gushing out of the ceiling. This all started because of a broken coil up in the ceiling. And so, unfortunately, the damage to this unit isn't entirely related to the leak. And so consequently, as you would expect with an insurance company, not all of this is covered by an insurance claim through EMC. What we're proposing for the almost $15,000 is to replace the whole unit, the condenser, mount it up on the rooftop. Justin thinks that we can save almost $1,000 off of what you're approving tonight by having somebody on site here crane it into place. We've got a lot of heavy equipment here. We've got lifts and different things that would be capable of picking one of these units up and putting it up on the rooftop for us to save a $1,000 crane. But this is kind of worst case scenario, as I understand it. So we need to do this. The other advantage Justin explained to me, and I thought this made some sense, is that our junior high is getting to be 10, 15 years old. Those units are going to start to fail. And so it's nice to kind of space some of them out so that we don't have to go and replace all of them at once. And so this one has failed, let's replace it, and then we'll replace some of them. We replaced one over at Tom's building last year that failed. And so it's nice to kind of spread them out so that it's not, they all start going down at the same time. This will be a PEPAL save expense, not the general fund.
Those are 18 years.
Pardon me?
Those are 18.
18 years old.
I would make a motion that we approve the replacement of the middle school condenser for $14,976.
Thanks, Ron. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Shane. So moved and seconded to approve the middle school classroom condenser replacement, Aircon Mechanical $14,976. Any further discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed, same sign. That investment motion passes. Move on to number 7, the last new business, I think, and that is consider K-12 English Language Arts curriculum adoption.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to recommend we table this one too. Gary and Tom and I took a look at this. I had a K-12 literacy adoption, and English language arts adoption. Team put in, I think, great work. And it has some great suggestions, but it's a $160,000 expense. And so, kind of circling back to what Robert said earlier, with every other expense going up, the number of strings we have, the number of levers we can pull is limited to control our general fund. I think we need to do everything we can to protect the general fund right now. And so, I don't want the staff, and I'll make sure that this is clear when I send out my meeting summary, but I don't want them to see this as a lack of support for the work. Instead, I'm going to ask the principals to put together a 3-year plan and phase this in over time so that we can get the materials we want. I'd like to bring that back in May. But just all expenses are trending up, inflation's out of control, and this is a big bite for us at a time where I just think if we can phase it in over 3 years, it makes it a lot more digestible.
ESSER funds can't be used for this.
We talked about that, and the DE has flat out said that even though 20% of our funds have to be set aside for learning loss, and even though Tom and I have talked about this curriculum adoption stuff all comes with intervention materials, that I think you could connect those dots, but they have flat out told Robert that no curriculum adoption materials will be considered under the ESSER purchases because they view that as
The second portion of it's for that, for
learning loss.
learning loss. It does not qualify as learning loss.
And so if we can't finagle something between now and May to go towards ESSER, because to me, this would be a perfect use for the ESSER dollars.
I assume that's what we were doing.
Until a couple of days
We
ago,
would probably
that's
use
what
a
we planned to do.
portion of it, but those ESSER dollars are being quickly depleted.
And so what I'd like to do is come back, if we can find a way to make it work all at once through ESSER, great, that's a win. If we can't, we'll try to figure out a way to take the $160,000 and spread it out over 3 years so that it's not a one-time ding to the general fund.
Good question, Karen. Any other comments? If not, then I would entertain a motion.
We'll do
Yeah,
one
go ahead.
question, sorry, and this is just for informational purposes on my end. $160,000, what are we getting for $160,000?
Yep, so this would be new materials, new textbooks, basically kindergarten through 12th grade.
Okay.
It comes with all the online support materials, comes with, was it $2,500 worth of training for our staff? But basically, it's the materials, the textbooks that kids use and the staff uses, and all the supplemental materials.
So the last major curriculum investment we made was,
Well, the last major one
last year.
in this area was about 10 years ago, but we invested in math curriculum a year ago.
at the tune of, just for shame, tune of how many dollars?
I think it was in the same neighborhood, 160 to
This stuff
180.
is expensive.
How often does that group evolve, I guess?
Interesting question.
How often should it? How often does it?
Right.
Totally two different things.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, as needed. You know, if something better comes along, we should go swap in and swap out. Generally, most districts shoot for what, Thomas, 5 to 10 year rotation?
Okay.
This would be a 10 year.
We've never had,
They can shoot for it, it didn't mean they hit it.
You know,
we have family consumer science materials from 1997. We just replaced some government stuff that also had Bill Clinton as president. So, yeah,
My trig book's 1999.
we did secondary and high school math last year, and we have done K-6 math a little bit before that. We've done some 6 through 12 science recently. But the last time we've done English language arts was 8 years ago. And high school, middle school might have been 9, and their materials are now obsolete. Like we can't,
they're not supporting.
that product is gone.
You can't buy it.
So you can't buy it.
And-
They've discontinued that product. So we're heading into next year with everything from 6 through 12 with nothing except make it up yourself. That's what we're at.
And English language just covers reading and English, correct?
Yeah, language arts, writing, you know,
And writing.
The writing.
reading, writing, speaking, listening, everything that falls under the English language arts.
So if I heard you correctly, you're from 6 through 12, you guys are going through this.
Those products will be gone.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, what I think you can expect is to come back with some sort of a plan for what 6-12 look like this year. And maybe, you know, some of the rest divided up over the next 2 years after that, but we need to work through that. I don't think we can bite the whole thing off at once.
Right. Is that something you can do, 6 through 12 only and not
Yep.
K through 5?
Yeah, I mean, we can break it up how we needed to.
What would that look like?
Really, I would
Price
just,
wise, I
It's
guess.
$57,000 for 7th grade through 12th grade. Sixth grade would be a little bit more.
Gotcha.
So I would say roughly $72,000 maybe for 6 through 12.
Was it going to be all the same company?
Correct. We would be lined up from kindergarten through 12th grade with one product, both sides of the streets.
That would be a first too.
Correct. Both sides of the
Sorry.
streets were under complete,
Never.
unanimous
So I
decision
think
on the product that they like.
Okay, I thought so, but I just.
I would frame this as a lot of interest and concern about this, and we'll just wait. If we choose to table it, then we'll just wait for a deep dive into this whenever our next meeting is. And
Well, I guess my question would be, you know, if you're saying that you say you have just enough textbooks to get what you have for a student population this year, well, obviously we're growing. If we have 10 more students, what do we do in that?
We'd have to purchase more.
But they're not supported.
Yeah, so like this quote pretty much encompasses 65 students per grade.
Oh, I'm talking about what you already have though, Tom, 6 through 12.
if we didn't do anything,
If we didn't do anything, if we had 10 more students, what are they gonna do for textbooks and?
Correct. We would probably, you could probably find some expired, whatever you want to call it. There's people that sell back old textbooks and things like that. We might be able to find some things.
But the company itself isn't.
They are no longer continuing that product. They've discontinued that product. They now have another version out there. You know, it'd be like,
Wiseman.
you got the Pinto, now we're moving on to the Taurus, you know, and so there's no more Pintos. So,
Totally understand.
yeah.
I'm sure that-
Pintos were.
I know, maybe a bad example.
You don't
I'm sure
make
they
money off
posted a
old
picture.
technology.
And what that quote has is digital. So you can access it on the computer, and also in many cases with like 612, you have a classroom set. Technology doesn't work, you can pull them off the shelf and have access to them. Or if a kid loses their computer because they've disobeyed privileges or whatever, you have a set there. So we've kind of had a 65 digital licenses per grade plus a 25 classroom set of textbooks for kids, physical textbooks.
Gotcha.
Because we've moved mainly to digital, which actually takes the cost down quite a bit. Because you don't have a physical, expensive product. You remember from college days how much things cost.
Takes the company.
Elementary's a little bit
So
different.
it's only
yes.
25 books
Right.
instead of
Very costly.
65 books, because you've got just enough for a classroom at a time, because they come in different times.
Elementary's a little bit different because,
Right.
you know, the kids at Mika's table, she's gonna work with a group of kids that are on grade level textbooks. Those same books, similar topic, but there's an above grade level group, and there's a just slightly below, and then there's a really far behind. The words are simpler, less syllables and so on. So we'll get like 4 copies of the books, but it meets their needs so that they can successfully read that and comprehend what it is they're reading. I mean, that's just kind of a simple way of putting it.
Gotcha.
So typically the elementary cost is just gonna be a little bit more because the volume of stuff that you get. Whereas older kids can navigate the materials online.
Sure.
And keep that cost a little bit lower.
Okay.
But we have I mean, if you ever want to see it, we've got a textbook curriculum adoption cycle that we've created. We've been trying to follow the best we can. But that's been crafted for many years, and that's kind of what we basically go by. But every year when we've had to renew certain textbook licenses, we had a 7-year license with our 6 through 12 ELA materials. And then we bought a 1 year and then a 1 year, and they kept telling us each time, you know, this is gonna go away. So just so you know, so we knew this year was the end of it.
So after the initial 5 years or whatever that you get with your initial purchase, then you can typically renew until they just.
I've typically been doing 8-year licenses with everything because we rarely ever hit 7. I've been doing 8-year licenses with just about everything because that's generally fair. And then if they still have that product, if we have to go to a 9th or a 10th year, we can make that work.
Gotcha.
Yep.
I appreciate I wasn't sure how all that worked.
Don't know what to get in the curriculum business.
Apparently.
Second only to the playground equipment.
Yeah. That boat.
Yes.
Seriously? That was Tom's deal too.
No, we were forced on that by the DE.
Yeah.
The DE rejected that playground. We had
Yes, yes, a new building,
or we could get rid of our preschool. That wasn't too hard.
new building, new playground equipment, new curriculum. All right, we're ready to table a motion?
Yes. I'll make a motion to table, motion to consider the K through 12 English language arts curriculum adoption.
I'll second.
All right, Ron and Carol, so we have moved and seconded to table the consideration of K through 12 English language arts curriculum. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sorry.
Nope. Opposed, same sign. The motion passes to table item number 7, language arts curriculum adoption. But we'll look forward to discussing that in detail at the next meeting. Superintendent's report.
Okay. I appreciate you supporting the support staff negotiations proposed earlier in the meeting. Thank you for that. Would offer a shout out to the PESP leadership, particularly Katie Jordan. Worked together for a very timely settlement, and that's always good. We're still working with the teachers. As of today, the Iowa Association of School Boards is reporting 89 districts have settled negotiations with their teachers, and that the average settlement of those 89 school districts is hovering around 3.7%. So I sent Mark and Carol a message pertaining to that earlier. We'll continue to talk. I looked for Mr. Trainer this afternoon. I didn't catch him, but I'll be trying to reach out and get a meeting set up with the PEA leadership to keep that conversation moving forward, certainly. And then coming back in May, my hope is that we can have some sort of a settlement with the other union group, as well as I'll put some figures together for anybody that's not unionized. So any of our support, our department heads, district directors, and administrators. So it's always kind of the last one we look at. I wanted to point out some things that I'd just like to be able to share with staff for clarification. We're currently, and I did share this in a staff update yesterday, but we're 22.52 hours over the state minimum of student contact hours, which is 1,080 hours. The 22.52 hours, just in case you're curious, is about 3.26 school days here. So we're sitting in pretty good shape. You don't want to jinx it, but we're trending like we're going to be fine this school year. Pleasantville doesn't have a history of making up missed time for students or staff unless we dip below the 1,080 hours. And so my recommendation would be that we continue to do that. Many school districts do require staff, in particular, to come back and basically log time. I've never believed in that. I think that it's the right message that we haven't made that a priority. Instead, we recognize our staff put in a lot of time and do hard work, and the hours that they've already logged in service of kids are valued, and we're not going to make them come back and sit here for from 8 to 4 just because we missed a day because of snow. So for comparison, my other district, their board is adamant that if we miss a day for snow, the staff's going to come back, even if there's not any professional development. They're going to come here and come into the building and sit from 8 to 4. And so I've appreciated Pleasantville's stance and willingness to support our staff the way we have for some time here. A couple of legislative pieces, none of them positive. I would call your attention to Senate File 2377. I'm calling that the early retirement or teacher recruitment bill. I would remind the board that I feel like this is bad legislation. Puts districts in a bad spot to either commit to early retirement or teacher retention and recruitment. And so the other thing that would do, the Senate version of this bill, again, Senate File 2377, would cap the incentive for early retirement at $3,300 per person per year. So it takes away the local control and context of early retirement, which is a lever we can pull to manage our general fund. So I'm opposed to it. It's like,
What's the philosophy of that, do you know?
how much the quick version is that to get any discussion around the management fund to move forward is difficult. Farm Bureau oftentimes digs in because it's property tax driven. And so in order to get any discussion moving forward, they felt like they had to loop this in and include the teacher recruitment and retention piece. But then they turn right around, because I would love
Because the money comes out of that file.
Yeah, the management fund is the.
No, I get that total.
Okay.
So I would love the ability to use some of our management fund to recruit teachers. What I don't like is the or part of it. Like, we'd have to announce 2 years in advance, hey, Pleasantville Schools is going to do for the next 2 years only early retirement or only teacher recruitment. You couldn't do both. And so innovative idea, the wrong concept. I wish it was more open. The reason why it's not more open is because any conversation about adding additional dollars to the management fund spikes Farm Bureau's pretty heavy hitter status up there, if I'm being honest. Other kind of interesting thing is that the per diem amount that legislators get paid ends April 19th. So I'm gonna guess they're gonna scramble a little bit. They have a lot of work to do, and I mean a lot of work to do. It appears that they will not get done on time, and so they hate that because once their per diem's gone, they don't like coming back pro bono. And so the voucher bill will be an interesting one. I think it's one of the few that they're hung up on. The other one is the school transparency bill. It's still alive, and I think it's another piece of legislation that is bad. But generally it's one that's kind of hung up. I think they're hung up on it right now. So that will be interesting to see. That's kind of the legislative update. It'll be fast and furious. If anything's going to move forward on any of those pieces of legislation, they've got a limited window to make it happen.
Is that transparency? Is that the one with the cameras in the classroom?
Let's move
You
past
take
that.
that out.
But it's the curriculum transparency. So for instance, it requires all the curriculum K-12 to be posted on a website and updated regularly.
Gotcha.
Like for a long
the whole
distance out in front. Right?
Long lead time. Yeah.
So like even every book I have read for kindergarten, I should put that on there. So they knew.
And then parents are encouraged, if they have a problem or take issue with any of the curriculum, they can exempt their own child and expect the school to come up with some sort of a meaningful activity in its place. So, like cleaning. Jeez. No.
I would add one thing on the legislature, and I've actually said this to one legislature, I think, because I know Tom and Tony like to dig in. Minnesota's went through this in the past few years, a lot of fighting that is not necessarily Republican, Democrat, but rural urban. And a rural Republican legislator said a rural suburban legislator, like everywhere else in the country, suburbs are growing, rural areas are shrinking. Said, hey, you farmers don't want to pay taxes. Not our problem. We have plenty of money. And I think that the Farm Bureau's approach to that in relation to rural Iowa is outdated and is helping to strangle what they're trying to preserve. And, I believe that. I think that we need to, in rural Iowa, need much more than anything in Waukee, need to fund our schools because those schools are funded on their own. So.
I'm going to keep moving forward. I wanted to make the board aware that we'd like to move forward with a request for proposal on our local property and casualty insurance program. Just an opportunity to reevaluate who we're working with locally here to represent us through EMC. It's a standard fee in terms of what EMC allows, so really it's about customer service. And so this is a good opportunity for us to reevaluate that. We'll seek to distribute our request for proposal to local agencies. We'll also post something on social media just to try to drum up some business with a target of conducting finalist interviews the week of May 2nd. So looking forward to that and excited to have that opportunity. Last couple of things should be much easier conversations. Just a reminder to the board, May 21st is graduation. Gary, we're at 2 p.m. like always. Typically the board shows up about 1:30 in the commons down here. You come up and
22nd.
what did I say?
21st.
I meant the
We'll be
22nd.
here on time.
It is the 22nd still. Sunday the 22nd, and typically we get here about 1:30, and Barb will pin a flower on you. If you're nice to her, she won't pin it into you.
I'm very good.
She's
Very
very
good. She hasn't stabbed me yet. So.
Yes, that's because I like you, Ron.
Typically, the least senior board member gives an address, so Shane.
That was not in the job description.
Speak from the heart.
It's only while you're the lowest.
Yeah.
Because it could be 1 year,
Could
2
be.
years.
Right.
You know,
Eventually you're leaving.
you have no formal role. You do sit on stage. We have a unique graduation ceremony where all the kids sit on the stage, which is the way it should be everywhere. It's awesome. I've never seen anything like it until I came here, but I have grown to love it. But you do sit on the stage. You have no formal role other than just to look nice. And typically the guys wear a suit and tie or coat and a tie. Help me. I don't need to describe how you.
We wore
To you,
dresses,
Michelle, how
I
you
did. I wore dresses.
I have no idea.
We typically
You
take
didn't
a
remember?
board picture that day. Ceremony typically lasts about an hour, so it's a really nice ceremony, but really.
It's a timely, yep.
It's very, very.
Gary does a good job.
And I'm warning you, as maybe the only one that hasn't done it before, the closer Kale gets to graduation, when they start doing that slideshows, you're gonna start like wishing you had Kleenex.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's hard to sit up there and watch that.
Yeah.
It's so
Hard from a
emotional.
teacher perspective.
So I'll just keep reminding you of that, but 22nd, 2 o'clock, try to be here about 1:30. Second to last thing I want to make you aware of is just some proposed work we're going to do out at the FFA farm. I'm soliciting bids for fence, and I've gotten a couple bids back already to just add some fence along the south and east property lines of the FFA farm. And we'll work with the neighboring landowner to coordinate and split the cost is our target.
How's that working out?
Reached out to 3 local companies and estimates, we'll have them all back. The estimates I've reviewed indicate that I will be able to approve this without the board's approval, so we'll probably try to get it done as soon as we can, just to avoid any further complications. I've also contacted Harvey Construction about replacing some of the metal pieces, the metal panels that blew off of one of the sheds out there. He'll also take a look at some of the vertical supports that are starting to rot a little bit, just get those back up into some better shape. So a little bit of work to be done out there, but otherwise excited still to have that opportunity for kids. And the last thing, I just wanted to let the board know, I did email you about this, but there's been a change to the law around open enrollment with regard to high school kids being eligible. In the past, it's always if you're a high school kid and you open enroll to a new district, you're out for 90 days unless there's a founded case of bullying and harassment. The law changed last year that granted school districts and boards the opportunity to waive that. Every school around us I've talked to said it's a really slippery slope and that we're not interested in going down that road. And so we are not ready to be the, what do we call it, transfer portal. And so we're not going to waive that unless there's some sort of a bullying or harassment case involved. So that's the stance. These are the two districts we talk open enrollment with the most, Knoxville and Mineola, definitely are on the same page.
Indianola is on the same page with that.
They are.
Lead us in a watch. That's
Yeah, I think it's
crazy.
I think you're gonna see, I think you're gonna see some of that going on. And I'm not saying that's a good thing.
Yeah, there's already one instance in the metro I know about, and the district, the new home district waived it. And somehow convinced the previous home district to waive it as well, but I feel like it sets such a precedent. And unless we're gonna go carte blanche where kids can hop around season to season.
Is this trying to equalize the private school advantage?
No, in fact, the private schools don't have to abide by this law right now.
That's what I mean, though. I mean, but this essentially
Oh, I see what,
gives public schools a more even playing field in some people's minds.
I hadn't thought about it that way, but it could, if we changed our statements.
Yeah, if people did that, it'd be,
I do think you will see, and I believe this, and it may not be a pleasant moment, may not be next year, but you will see struggling programs poached, particularly difficult parents, say for instance, track at Pleasantville. We're struggling, Indianola's going, great guns. Make a phone call, you get the right parent, the right mood, and boom.
Would certainly be the way of the world in college sports and beyond.
Yeah.
For now, I think that's our stance, and if we see a trend changing, I'll bring that back and we'll reconsider it, but
and then you would make, in the situation of bullying and whatever else you articulated, you would make that decision. That wouldn't be a board decision in those situations.
Could they appeal that to us, Tony? I'm just asking because I can see that.
I believe potentially they could.
I don't know that for sure, but I think they can.
It's not outlined, but it's certainly that would follow the normal chain of command.
So who changed that rule? Was that the athletic association or the
The
school?
Department of Ed, they posted new rules and regs and didn't tell them about it.
When you found out?
I found out because a parent caught it and brought it to our attention.
Out of curiosity, how many graduates do we anticipate, Mr. Brady?
I just sent, I can't remember if we had approved that or not. So I sent Ms. Gales with the list. And there are 57 on the list. Not to be on the many board meeting. I think, I can't remember if we approved that yet or not, but just in case.
Is that many, Gary, we do that
Can I do a
usually?
quick advertisement, please?
Yes.
Do you know what this is?
Yeah.
Okay. This is at the elementary, they're having their annual leadership event, which they had it the last year I was teaching, which was 3 years ago. Then COVID hit, they didn't have it. Last year they did it virtual, correct? And so this is the first year back again. It's May 13th, and this is Mrs. Robinson, our teacher's drawing. She does crayon drawings, and that was one of the things I got at the Fine Arts Showcase. I did on her, one of her prints, so I'm excited to have that. But it's a great afternoon to get to see what the kids are doing and see them in leadership roles, even down to the kindergarten and TK and preschool age. So I've already got on my calendar, can't sub that day, so.
I would like to attend.
Friday the 13th.
There you go.
And if you, see, I'm having a hard time because I want to come to this and I'm going to come to this, but I may come smelling like fish and oil because that's the day of Rodney Knudsen's fish fry. So, you know, the kids might see me come in and wonder who this guy is. If you want some of the best fried fish you ever had, come for Rodney's shindig and then come over to the leadership event. because it'll be a cool, my kids are real, my own children are really excited about this. They've been practicing, talking about it. Jackson's got to be a statue, the wax statue, does that sound
The
right?
Wax Museum,
Yeah.
they do do it. So
Who's he
they
gonna
have-
be?
Who is he? Do you know?
Oh, Steph Curry. I did,
Oh, fun.
I did know that.
All right, so any other comments?
I did have one thing, Mark, I wanted to mention, Tony alluded to it. The Webb Shadle Foundation is, I've been working with Ken Kenyon to get the information with Doug. I always call it the baseball field pond, that is the schools. A lot of people think it's the cities, but it's the schools. It's got some of the same problems as the city park pond in terms of infestation with algae and stuff. And to be very apparent, I walk by that pond a lot. I go down there and fish sometimes just as my stress reliever. There's a lot of kids that use it, and some adults that use it too. We're going to be underwriting the cleanup of the pond of all the algae and stuff. It will be a 4-year process because it is so infested. We can't go in and kill everything at once, or we kill all the fish. But Ken has advised us on what to do and the chemicals to use, and I'm going to be working with Hagen Fouch. He doesn't know that yet. I'm going to be working with Hagen Fouch to do the application, and then so we'll pick up the whole thing, and it would also be an application like tonight. Maybe if we had a really severe rain, they may have to do some applications. So I'm budgeting for four applications for the next 4 years, and then 2 applications per year after that. So
If you don't mind,
be a good thing for our community. So
if you don't mind me adding, the Nolan Roth flag football tournament was this weekend, and I can tell you that fish hatcheries restocking those ponds will be a part of that contribution.
that is one of it.
And I kind of want to dedicate it more towards that school pond, so that will probably
Tom, if you would
be
want-
decided at some point soon.
Whoever makes a decision, man, contact me, because I have some Shadow money that could help with that too.
Yep.
And I would be glad to do
Yeah,
that.
'cause I know a lot of kids like
In
fishing,
Nolan's
so.
name, I would love to do that. So.
That's awesome. Any other promotions?
Just
or
something
comments?
on social media. Was the goose at the Little League address today?
Yes, it was addressed in the announcements,
Okay,
in a
thank
very
you.
angry tone by a principal.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of concerned citizens, so I just wanted to make sure
Yes.
that.
This principal's tired of Huggy Wuggy and inappropriate tag games that they learn on TikTok, and also throwing rocks at ducks and geese. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Some supervision in what kids watch on their phones and things like that would be wonderful
Yeah. Mhm.
Totally agree.
in public settings.
Thank you.
Is there any
I didn't make my
positive way to
jokes.
end?
Oh,
I'd like to invite everyone to the Dance Team Spring Show on
Yes.
Saturday night at 7.
Yes,
That's fun.
thank you.
That's a Saturday.
Saturday night, and you can take advantage of the bake sale, and then we'll sign you up for a big booster dance club, the new dance club, booster club that is starting. We'll sign you up for membership while you're there too.
All
So,
Saturday night.
All Saturday.
I said one quick follow-up.
Yes, sir.
What I talked about, I think it was 2 meetings ago on the crossing guard over here. So we followed up.
Yep, we posted for a vacancy to see if we could get anybody interested, and had no response. I did get permission from the city to do it.
Right.
But we posted it, the same rate and same pay that it would be for the other 2 positions we have. It's honestly a battle to get people to do it. And I was afraid of that, but
Gotcha.
we have posted.
Okay. I forgot to ask last.
As we
week.
hire new people, we will ask if that's something that they would be willing to take on.
We put that in there. Job title.
And who's mine?
No, not yours. Whoever we hire
Well,
next.
that works too.
I would just hate to see something happen. It's so busy.
The quick question, does that have to be a school employee,
That's what I was gonna ask.
the crossing guard?
I mean,
Because I was wondering, like, do you get a senior citizen or older person, a retired person in a group of that? I don't know.
can it be a volunteer? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I assume they could volunteer, but I didn't know if we could say, hey, we'll hire, Joe Blow's 65 and retired and he'll do it, something like that. I just was
It's
wondering.
posted in the public.
It's posted to the
Posted to
public.
public.
Okay, that's what I'm asking, yes. All right.
We hired John Banks to be just a
My dad can hardly walk or see or hear, so. There
wouldn't be a car go by.
He damn near needs his own crossing.
Big Chapman, twice as long as Big Chapman.
Yeah, he needs his own guard.
Sounds good.
That's a good way to end it.
Any other follow-up? That's good.
Yes, I don't think it's good, but it's the reality.
Right, understood. I like your idea.
Yeah.
That's it.
The worry I have though, and I see this happen in one other school district, when we start adding them, it's dicey because there's always somebody else who wants one, another's like, I know somebody will ask about having one at the corner of West and Jasper, and then some, it's like when we do our in-town bus stops is a great example. We don't have to do those, we do them just for convenience, and because we have the capacity, well, that new, the kids get on the bus over at the new development. It seems like 30. And so all of a sudden that bus is to capacity now, and it's like a pressure point where, and I've got people asking for other in-town stops, and it gets complicated. I worry if we add one there, which as somebody who drives past that every morning, I see the need,
Right.
but I know there's 2 or 3 other places where people are gonna want them if we start adding them.
Oh, really?
I just would predict that,
Right.
It's not a reason not to fill it, just something I think we could be braced for.
Sure.
Well, good banter and discussion tonight. This is fun stuff. And we continue to have an awesome school, just always opportunities as well. So thanks for you folks for being here, and I entertain a motion to adjourn.
We'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those approved to adjourn, say aye.
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 There's the last
There's
one.
Michelle Huggins, the
All right.
judge.
Meeting adjourned.